welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda.
And I can't believe this is how we're opening 2020.
Well, you know what? Before we dive into how we are actually opening 2020, because we'll talk about that. We need to talk about how we as a podcast are opening 2020, right?
Which is far more exciting.
It really is, because I teased a little bit about this with the horses last week, but I haven't really. We weren't sure what we were doing. We needed to make sure. It was the holiday season. We had to check our schedules and make sure this would work, and it does. So for the month of January, welcome to Request Month. We are doing 4 weeks where we are taking requests from people who listen to the show. So if you've got a movie you want us to watch, enjoy, suffer through, just fucking deal with, let us know in our Discord, on Twitter. If you know how to reach us directly, do that. If you are on our Twitch streams, you can talk to us there. Just be like, hey, this is the movie I want you to watch. And there's a chance we'll watch it. We've got the first 2 weeks filled. We got 2 weeks at the end that are still wide open. So get at us with those requests.
Hell yes. Was this a request? Was this movie a request, or was this a oddity that you've dug up?
This actually was a request. This is a request from friend of the podcast, Maddie, who, if you were listening like a year and a half ago, she did our episode where all I did was yell about The Pit. And I forgot the name of the movie. I just know it as the Pit episode.
True Grit the Pit.
True Grit the Pit. That's right. Yeah, she was on that episode. She's a really, really cool person who gave us Little Monsters to watch.
I was about to say, now I feel slightly bad for the fact that I'm about to shit all over this movie. Although, to be fair, I have no idea how she feels about this or why she even requested it.
Well,
so maybe that's fine.
I was going to say, I can add a little bit of backstory, which is she's like, hey, I found this weird, wacky movie. It feels like something you and Jackson would like, just given like our weird taste and stuff. And I 100% can see why she would recommend it to us.
I found the the Hulu blurb and the poster very appealing. I like it seemed like a cute little curio.
Exactly. It seems like the type of weird fucking bullshit that would be right up our alley. If you're unfamiliar, and have we said the title? We're watching Little Monsters with Lupita Nyong'o, Josh Gad, and Alexander England, I think is his name. You would know him from this, and also he was in Alien Covenant.
Oh, was he also in Alien Covenant? I thought he was when the movie first started, because he's got a similar looking face, like a similar hair color. I thought he was Alfie Allen, the actor who plays Theon Greyjoy in Game of Thrones, but he is not.
No, he has not been in nearly anything of high repute as Game of Thrones. He's in Covenant.
he was in the Michael Fassbender doing the fingering movie.
God, fuck Covenant. Oh, flashbacks to last January. Don't worry about it. Yeah, so Little Monsters is, I'm sure most people are unfamiliar with it. It was a Hulu-specific movie. It's about kindergarten teacher Lupita Nyong'o and the Alexander dude, whose name I don't even remember, what the fuck the name of his character was. It was like Dave or some shit like that. And them corralling a bunch of 5-year-olds through the zombie apocalypse. It's a great premise. It's something that, as said, entirely screams Jackson and I, because it sounds bizarre, it sounds bloody, it sounds great. It's 2 of those things? 1.5 of those things?
One and a half. It's not as bizarre as it should be. It's mostly I'd say all it has is bloody. I found the movie to be quite tiresome. Definitely in the first 15 minutes, time had slowed and I found myself wiggling the trackpad to see where I was at in the movie's time frame. And when I saw that only 15 minutes had passed, I said, "Oh no."
Yeah, it's a movie that has ideas. I'm gonna give it that.
It is not completely without merit, is how I would describe it.
Yeah, I would say it's not a great movie. I don't know that I would even call it a good movie. I would say it's a movie that I enjoyed, provided you're half watching it in the background. Because I definitely spent some time like playing with my dog while it was on, and like when I'd look at it, I'd be like, haha, that's a funny moment, and then I'd go back to playing with my dog. And like I feel like that's probably the best way to watch it because it does have some like good bits to it, but they're bits. It's kind of. Did you ever watch Dan Olson Foldable Humans video about A Christmas Story?
No, actually.
It's a really fascinating video where he talks about like why everyone likes A Christmas Story, and basically it's the perfect thing to have on in the background because you'll pay attention for the bit that you like, and everything about it is so insular, and you can just move on to the next part and completely forget about the rest of it. That's kind of what this is like, where you really should just look up for the part that you think is funny and then go back to not paying attention.
So now that you mention it, it's interesting because we were looking up the pedigree of the film because Lupita Nyong'o's a pretty big star. Josh Gad,
she's also great in this. We're gonna talk more about her in a minute, but I need to shout from the rooftops that she is by far the best part of this movie.
There's also Josh Gad, the worst non-Adam Sandler and Kevin. I almost said Kevin Smith, Kevin James comedy actor. And who we also looked up to see if he's been in anything good. And when your most prestigious role is Olaf in Frozen, you know that you're poisoned.
I mean, he was to be fair, he was a Broadway singer for a while.
Okay. We'll give him. I don't know the guy. I don't know Josh Gad, but like every time I see him in a movie, I'm like, oh no. And that's also the case here. So I digress though. We looked up the pedigree of the director because, there's some pretty big stars. And I think that it's interesting. This appears to be this director's first feature. He's directed a lot of shorts. He's directed a few episodes of television, but this seems to be his first feature film. And so now that you mention the insular Christmas Story bit by bit quality, I can see how this would be someone who had an idea for this movie that should have maybe been a short film. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's got enough of a idea there. They're this could have been half an hour, 45 minutes long.
Yeah, or even just even just from the premise, even 10 to 15 minutes.
Well, see, I'm giving some credit there. I think a tight 10-15 would be something really memorable. I think the 30 to 45 minute would be a lot because there's definitely some talent in here. I'm thinking specifically of the opening segments of main character and ex-girlfriend arguing were really good. They were really well shot. They brought you into the movie in a very nice way. And there's definitely some ideas here, and I want to give him the full 30-45 minutes to kind of explore the ideas that he has and kind of work with that space. But I see what you're saying, that a 10-15 would be really a tight, good short film, but the 30 to 45 I feel is what would let them really flex,
That's fair, and I think that pointing to the way the film is constructed, and I think that's one of the things that makes it watchable is a word that you've described it. I don't know, I can't remember if you've said it on air or just in the pre-discussion.
It's watchable. It's 100% watchable.
And I think that illustrates how I think that, visually and in terms of directing and even in terms of the zombie makeup and stuff, the movie is fun to look at. I like the setting of the children's petting zoo.
Juxtaposed next to the U.S. Army base should have been a lot funnier than it was.
It should have been. And so there's some things like that fall flat. And I think that I think this is a writer-director combo. And this is clearly a guy who's much more talented behind a camera than behind a word processor.
Yeah, there's some stuff that sticks, but I think that it needed a couple more passes.
Yeah. So and speaking of the pedigree, I have a parable for us real quick.
All right. Will there be a moral at the end?
There'll be an analogy. Let's say.
Okay.
So there is a strip of Calvin and Hobbes where Calvin goes up to his dad, who famously likes to fuck with him. And Calvin asked, "Hey, Dad, where do babies come from? Do they come from the stork, like I've been told in like cartoons?" And Calvin's dad says, "Nah, you get babies from Sears." And Calvin's like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, like babies, you buy them from Sears, you follow the assembly instructions, and you make yourself a baby." And Calvin's like, "Wow, like I came from Sears?" And your dad's like, No. You were a blue light special from Kmart, almost as good and a lot cheaper." And so our parable for today is that a Netflix movie, that attracts, say Martin Scorsese to direct The Irishman. That's going to be your Sears baby that you built. Hulu's the blue light special. Hulu's the Kmart. You're going to get something of a not quite the same pedigree from Hulu if you're looking for their original content.
This honestly kind of reminds me of a movie that Netflix would have put out like last year. Actually.
Yeah, Netflix has definitely stepped up their game as far as their films go. Like Netflix does seem to be improving their output. Like there's always some sort of Netflix thing that's in the conversation for one reason or another, whereas like it doesn't, aside from of course HBO, which is a big like actual like cable channel, none of these other sort of competitors I think have been able to really have the same cultural pull as a Netflix series.
Except for Disney Plus, you shill, as we found out last episode.
Yeah. Disney Plus has Star Wars, though. That's not fair. It's not fair.
Fun fact, I watched... this was actually the first movie I watched of 2019. I followed it up by watching Star Wars Episode 2.
I have so many questions. None of which are relevant to Little Monsters. So yeah, I mean, we've been really kind of going on the bottom of the barrel of this, like, streaming service original content, huh? Like, we did that bonus episode about, I almost called it The Artist. No, it's not The Artist, it's The Fanatic.
The Fanatic.
The Fanatic. We did that. That's Redbox's hat in the ring to try and make some Oscar bait. We got Hulu trying to make Shaun of the Dead. Is Hulu owned by Disney?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that makes sense as for why Darth Vader was so conspicuous in this movie.
Oh, I didn't even make that connection. I gotta say, just because as I said, there's some positives to this movie. I like the Darth Vader shtick. Like, I was largely charmed by it.
Yeah, no, it's not like a bad thing, but it was one thing that I was thinking about, like, because I genuinely couldn't remember if Disney did own Hulu, but they do. And so, but yeah, no, I mean, as far as like a good
shtick,
shtick,
going to be where they stick like their dirty like R-rated stuff.
I think that's the plan, like all their Fox stuff. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which I guess is good for branding, which is all, Disney does best.
Mm-hmm. You shill.
I guess, like, also brings up the other question. So it makes sense that we'd have Lupita Nyong'o and Josh Gad. It makes sense that Disney would be able to strong-arm them because they've been heavily associated with Disney brands at this point, into being like, hey, we're trying to make original content for Hulu. We have, these photos of you like drunk and passed out at this party, Lupita Nyong'o and Josh Gad. So we're going to release them unless you star in our shitty zombie movie on Hulu.
What a wild way to blackmail two like grown ass adults. You were drinking. No.
What do we have anything else to say in the non-spoilers?
I mean, I guess all I can really say is like, it's a fine movie to have on in the background if you like zombie movies, if you want something to just kind of laugh at occasionally, if you don't own Shaun of the Dead. Otherwise, just go watch Shaun of the Dead. Also, I guess, quick warning, they do have some light slurs. Like, that's just something that I like to bring up just in case someone decides to take our recommendation and goes to watch something and is upset by it. Just so you know, I don't want somebody to go in there and be like, wow, I can't believe they recommended this. It's fucking trash. It goes away fairly quickly. But
I mean,
it's worth mentioning.
I'll make it even easier. here's two separate statements that you should be able to glean whether or not I recommend the movie from. The first is that I am not typically a guy who is a movie on in the background while I fold laundry kind of person. When I am watching a movie, like, I want to be given it like my 100% attention. Like, if I have background noise, it's usually like a podcast or something. I got to about the hour mark and pulled out my Switch and started playing Smash Bros. The only reason that I didn't stop the movie 15 minutes in when I was really annoyed by it is because I knew our viewers would yell at me, like, with the Silent Hill situation. So don't bother with this one. Lupita Nyong'o's great, but she's great in a lot of things. Watch a better thing than this.
You know what? Fair enough. So let's dive into spoilers. Let's start talking about what about this didn't work. But before we do, it's a new year, it's a new us, new intermission moment. Because I'm gonna start shilling for the podcast a little bit more here. Go rate us on iTunes if you haven't already. If you've been listening to just our intro stuff and not hearing all the way through to the end, go rate us on iTunes. We really appreciate it. Go tell friends. Go follow us on Twitter. Whatever you gotta do. But, like, just, pass us around. It's how we get more episodes out. It's how we grow. It's how we become more responsible as adults. Just kidding. That will never happen. You've been juked. Next week, we're going to be talking about Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter. So,
which is a follow-up to our famous Patreon exclusive episode, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. So if you want that deep lore, you're going to have to become a $5 patron.
Yep. Patreon.com/BADHcast. Let's do spoilers.
So, Sean, where do we want to start with this one?
I mean, I think the easiest answer is to dive into what we don't like about the movie, and that can be summed up with the main character.
Very, very easily, in fact. Pretty much what makes this movie so tiresome to me mostly revolves around him.
And I'm not going to look up his name. I don't expect you. Do you remember his name?
The character's name or the actor's name?
The character's name.
The character's name, I believe, is David, but I could be high.
All right. Well, you know what? We're calling him Dave. That's fine.
So Dave.
Dave it is. His name is Dave for the purpose of this podcast. Dave is a shitlord. There's nothing. He's irredeemable. He is not a shitlord in a really particularly funny manner. He's just kind of a manipulative trash bag. And I want to throw him out in the beginning of the movie. About midway through the movie, like, obviously this is going to be a redemptive arc, because this movie can't think of a way to do anything clever with him. And so they just have him be redeemed, especially because Josh Gad's there. And Josh Gad's supposed to be the shitlord sacrifice that gets sacrificed, as sacrifices do. So the movie just makes Dave be good at the end and hook up with Lupita Nyong'o, which is bad. It's bad. Especially, before we even talk about it, I want to talk about something that, like, I was kind of noticing and I thought was kind of clever, and then it kind of lost itself.
All right.
Because Dave, I know Lupita Nyong'o's character is Miss Caroline. I don't remember her first name. But he spends I think it's Abigail or something like that.
Audrey. It's
Audrey. Thank you. He just spends the entire time calling Audrey Miss Caroline, which I liked. It was kind of infantilizing of Dave. It kind of reminds us that he's just a kid and that he's not growing up and that he's kind of a shitlord of a kid. And so, like, my assumption was, like, he'd grow up. But, like, the fact that he grows up and then gets with the teacher is kind of weird, right?
I didn't even think about that, but you're absolutely right. Oh, man.
Like, it feels like that's everything. Like, he should grow up and then, like, they should mutually respect each other and go on their ways. Or be like, listen, you're not who I like, but I thank you for helping me get those kids out. Now go do something else. Continue to be your shitlord of a self, but, like, a slightly better version.
The problem is that this movie is following every rom-com cliche there's ever been. It doesn't have a single original idea as far as that goes. Not even combining it with a zombie movie, because that is Shaun of the Dead, which does it with a lot more grace and class. And
Warm Bodies. Forgot about that movie, didn't you?
Sean, you just initiated the beginning of the Book of Revelations by reminding the public of Warm Bodies.
I saw that movie. I didn't hate it. As a quick aside, just because we're talking about zombie movies, I did not hate that movie.
Oh, don't keep bringing it up. Someone's gonna request. So here's problem number one with Dave, which I think is what made my overwhelming feeling throughout this more tiresome than like even mad or irritated. Although I was irritated too. That's a good word.
Mostly with Josh Gad.
With Dave and Josh Gad. I was very irritated by Josh Gad.
Yes,
as always.
Because his basic we should talk about Josh Gad for a quick second, just to kind of explain what his whole deal is, right?
Yeah, we can knock him out in like a couple of minutes, whereas Dave's gonna require a deeper dive.
Josh Gad is a children's television host, beloved by all, like exactly what you're picturing. There's nothing interesting about it. And then, what a shock, he drops the ruse and he's this, swearing, cursing, drinking, fucking dude. And I mean fucking in the literal sense. And there you go. That's the joke. You haven't heard that one before, right? It's a new one. But they're really clever with it.
But wait, Sean, you're forgetting about the heart-to-heart scene where he talks about what a bad person he is because he's a motherfucker, literally, and that it forces Dave to confront his own shitbagness. It's like you took all the elements of a screenplay, put them in a fucking screenplay generator. He read every book on screenwriting there is in the store, found the most formulaic fucking movie with this set of plot points to insert.
And like, there is before I'll use this as a segue to get you back into Dave, because there is a version of this movie in my mind where Dave takes over Josh Gad's role as like the kid teacher, but still a shitlord underneath. And like, I think that's kind of interesting, but like, this movie doesn't want to be that like grimy. This movie is like, for all its weird griminess to it, like including Josh Gad ripping the jugular out of a zombie kid, which could have been something. Like, you don't really see kid kills in movies, but like everything about this movie is still like very restrained for such an absurd idea. So like it's never grimy enough to let Dave take over that role, because that would be something gross, but like thematically in line with everything else that's happening. This movie manages to straddle like this weird combination of kind of grimy but kind of squeaky clean. It's the type of movie where it thinks that swearing is a big no-no. I just realized that. That is absolutely what this is.
It's the type of movie that thinks Josh Gad cacking his trousers is a big no-no. Like,
oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Like, that's a big joke. He's like, I pooped in my pants. So, like, really, it's like the movie was made by a kindergartner.
Well, let's talk about that. Because, you see, thematically, that does... No.
I was going to say, don't even start. Don't... that's how people see me, Sean. That's how people envision me as a host. Don't give them that ammunition. But no, like, see what you're suggesting with like Dave's endpoint being like a sad, sleazy clown. Like, that would be clever. That would be too clever for this movie, which just has to hit every single expected beat. Like, as soon as you see all the pieces, as soon as you see, deadbeat ex-boyfriend, happy clown Josh Gad on the TV, and, smoking hot kindergarten teacher Lupita Nyong'o, like, you can instantly just take all those elements, snap your fingers a couple times, and make a screenplay out of it, which is what they did. He's gonna be a man-child, and he's gonna learn a lesson to, grow up and get the girl and do all that dumb bullshit.
I will say, I definitely thought that Josh Gad was just going to be a cameo and moved past. I was actually a little surprised when he showed up in movie, but like, it was one I'm like, oh, huh, interesting. Oh, okay, and then moved on.
Yeah. Oh, this is what they're doing. Oh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's literally like by the time by the time he has had his first fight with his sister, you like know how the whole movie is going to go down. You know how that whole character is going to go down. And he's just, again, like you say, he's not a funny asshole. He's not an interesting, like, you know, deep character kind of asshole. He's none of these things. He's exactly like the blank sheet of paper sort of asshole, paint by numbers character archetype of the man-child that we've seen in 1,000 different comedies, and I'm just tired. I'm so tired of it.
This actually feels like, speaking of just Adam Sandler way back when, this feels like this could have been an Adam Sandler movie, but like slightly better, weirdly.
Yeah, it definitely, this is too highbrow for Adam Sandler. Sure.
This is like declining Adam Sandler.
Yeah, I'm like, I think the best way to put it is that the main character feels like a character Adam Sandler would play, which is every Adam Sandler character.
Well, I do shout outs to Uncut Gems because that movie fucking ruled.
Well,
but
Adam Sandler's a weird guy, and that like in his own movies he's a hack fraud clown, but like get him in front of another filmmaker and suddenly he's a real actor. Like he started a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, for God's sake.
Oh my God, yeah.
So like, you know, but stock default Adam Sandler is the word of the day here, and I think it's even in hindsight it's even weirder. Like when we were looking up the director, he looks a lot like the main character, which I can't imagine was an accident. I can't.
Tug my shirt collar on that one.
I was gonna say, like, you know, he was the writer-director on this movie, and if my deductions are correct, and that this is a heavily autobiographical story, I can't say that I'm too happy for this director's Hulu success. Because, yeah, just like there's nothing. Like all right, so here's an example. Here's a way that you can make kind of a sleazy character like this sort of likable, and that, like, you know, maybe you make him a little sly. Like, yeah, like he's letting the 5-year-old play Left 4 Dead, and he's doing all this stuff and getting involved in his schemes. I think some of those schemes are so over the top and stupid that it comes right back around to making him unlikable when he's getting the shit beaten out of him by a naked real estate agent and tiny Darth Vader just sits there and watches. So like that's uncomfortable, and I hated that scene. But like, you know, there's a way that you make that character kind of work. Like, ooh, yeah, like I'm gonna be the cool uncle who's gonna, like, you know, do all this sneaky stuff and your mom's not watching, and you could build that kind of relationship a little bit, and that, like, that's obviously what they're going for. They all but call the main kid a soy boy for, you know, eating all the tofu and stuff. So like
That's always fun for me.
yeah, right. And so, like, you know, but that seems to be what they're setting up, is that, like, oh, you know, mom's too overprotective, you know, mom's too, like doesn't let the kid, like, see the outside world enough, like, he's too sheltered, and, you know, big old Uncle Dave, he's coming through to help, and he's coming through to, like, you know, expand the kid's horizons a bit, which, like, doesn't really end up happening. He's just kind of a shitty guy to his nephew.
Also, the mom was right. Like, it's not one of those things where, like, the payoff at the end of it is like, oh, the mom was over sheltering or whatever. The kid clearly has issues where he can't eat certain things.
Yeah,
that is
like,
not like a fad diet. The kid clearly has, like, celiac disease or something.
The kid almost chokes to death from an allergic reaction, and Lupita Nyong'o has to go, like, spin attack zombies with a shovel because he fucked up using the EpiPen.
Which was actually pretty great.
Listen,
I liked pretty much anything Lupita Nyong'o did in this movie.
I got mixed feelings about that, in that, like, it felt sort of like, to me, like, okay, why is she suddenly spin attacking zombies with a shovel? What inner character would justify this? And the answer is basically because we like Lupita Nyong'o, which we do, and that the movie knows that we like her. And especially because I think in the context, like, you can make that scene work where like she's going mama bear in the protection of, like, the students in her employ, and, like, you know, kicks the shit out of a bunch of zombies, which I guess is technically what's happening, because
that's exactly what happens, because literally, like, the scene prior is when she goes off on Josh Gad.
But it's so I think it's so removed from the, like, initial heat of, like the danger of all these kids, and I think the fact that it's one specific kid also dilutes that feeling a little bit. The way the scene just sort of reads to me is like, okay, so she's like, you know, a sweet like kindergarten teacher who also happens to be a giant badass. Which is fine.
Well, I mean, that's also kind of what her character theoretically is, like, as it plays out throughout the movie. Like, the movie clearly is trying to explain that just through, like, the various dialogue she has with other people, like, as she's, you know, chasing bands and breaking into things. It does, the payoff is that it's Hanson, get it? But, like, that is functionally what they're trying to do there. Like, there is definitely an underlying element to it, especially because she deals with the first zombie by, like, poking him through, and, like, clearly her instinct to save the kid was higher than that. And, like, so when they come back around, she realizes that, and it's the payoff of the kid talking earlier that you need to cut the head off the zombies. Like, it's that realization. And, like, we don't actually see her go full, I don't even know how to describe it. Full Super Saiyan, sure, fuck it, we're gonna take a Jackson word. And, you know, wipe out the rest of the zombies. But, like, those first 4 there, I think, worked just to kind of pay off a lot of things that were set up earlier on.
I mean, I guess, like, visually none of it seems to connect, though. Like, that's the sort of thing where you're right, but I don't feel like when I'm watching the movie that, like, those are not even logical connections, but, like, emotional connections that I'm making in a given scene.
But see, the trick is to play with your dog so that when you look up and see this, you don't make that connection that it doesn't logically follow quite well. And instead, just acknowledge that, hey, I recognize these bits set up being earlier. The payoff is all right. Great, let's move on.
Well, fuck me. I sat down and didn't play with my dog. I should have done that.
Honestly, always.
What am I doing with this podcast? Go play with your dogs, guys. But yeah, so like, I don't know. I guess I wonder if this also gets into kind of my other big, because I had 2 sort of big issues with this movie. The first, of course, is our main character who sucks, and if like that was actually really disappointing. I got like whiplash, like the moment I realized that Lupita Nyong'o wasn't going to be our protagonist. It was like, oh no, like they just gave her top billing because she's like the biggest star. And like as soon as I realized it was going to be about this schlub with his typical romance, his typical rom-com problems, like I wanted to check out then and there, frankly. Because like otherwise, because like it's such a fun little premise of you know, kindergarten teacher's gotta shepherd her class through zombies. All right, great. Good premise. Definitely works for a short film. And like there are good bits in it. It's not like it doesn't completely deliver. Like I like when she is conga lining everyone to get them around the zombies. Like that's funny. That's a funny visual. But my problem, I guess, is this. And this is going to be a weird thing coming from me. You know, famous child hater Jackson Keller. But I don't think this movie and a lot of other movies give children enough credit. Which I know why.
Oh god, speaking of whiplash. Oh fuck. Jackson defending children?
Jackson's defending children here. I'm going on the record. So like children are dumb. This is true.
There it is.
But they're not that dumb. And so like it's always just weird, especially in like a live action scenario, when you see a bunch of children watching zombies like literally eat people and then just completely buying into their teacher's bullshit. Like it's like I think even just like the animals, like if they had seen a man like bite the head off a goat, like I don't care like how detached from reality you think a 5-year-old is. A 5-year-old's gonna know that goat is dead. that man just ate that goat, and they're gonna be very upset about that. Which none of them really are, except for Beth. Was that her name, the little girl?
Dude, I don't know.
Whatever. But like, And now I understand why they do this before people get at me. It's like, well, Jackson, it's a comedy. Like, you have to make the children kind of like oblivious little dummies so you can have some yucks, which is fair. But I also think that comes across as weird. I think that one of the reasons that so much successful and popular comedy, even like violent comedy, is animated is that you can have that kind of stuff like starring kids and have sort of unrealistic things without it feeling super duper dissonant. Like the fact that that Josh Gad, who is like all these children's hero, they're all wearing like Kermit the Frog backpacks like from his show, and he starts screaming at them and like pooping his pants in front of them, and like all they could say
pooping his pants.
Josh Gad cacks his pants in this, guys. I just can't stress that enough.
Oh, it's so funny. Sorry, continue. Every time you bring it up, I have to laugh because he pooped his pants.
I mean, that's the level of humor that we're operating under here. And so like, if he starts screaming at those kids and they're not going to sing the F-word song, they're going to cry. They're going to cry that their hero is yelling at them. And so, yeah, it's funnier for them to be chanting their, song that Miss Caroline taught them. But also, these are real children that we're looking at, and that's not how real children act. And I don't think that the movie is quite over the top enough to justify that. I don't think. Like, it's not stylish enough for me to like shake the realism.
Let me put this in really simple terms. Your movie isn't good enough for us to not pay attention to the subtle like incongruities.
Yes.
You have not done enough to hide those things from us.
Or let's talk about Edgar Wright. Because this obviously takes a lot from Shaun of the Dead. And it's different from Shaun of the Dead in that Shaun of the Dead, in terms of the way it's shot, like when you think about an Edgar Wright movie, like especially nowadays, you think of a lot of like really over the top, like quick cuts, like, editing, flourishes and all that other stuff, soundtrack wackiness, Scott Pilgrim, Baby Driver, etc. But Shaun of the Dead, one thing that's surprising going back to it, especially if you're familiar with the rest of his oeuvre, is that Shaun of the Dead is pretty low energy in comparison, and that it's so mundane is kind of the point.
It still got the quick cuts though. It quick cut to a slow walk.
Yeah, like it does. It's not like completely lacking his hallmarks, but it's more of a juxtaposition between kind of the slow, boring, dull talking sequences and like the wackiness. Whereas this doesn't really have any of those stylish flourishes. Whereas in something like even his next movie, something like Hot Fuzz, that movie, like the way that it's shot and the way that the editing is done makes you not care that in a lot of ways you're basically watching a cartoon. Like when everything gets so over the top at the end of Hot Fuzz, that feels really earned in a way that this movie doesn't, because so much of it is pretty standard. It's not even like purposefully slow like Shaun of the Dead is. Like there's nothing. I mean, that opening sequence is pretty effective when the couple keeps like arguing, but after that there's not that much that's especially clever in terms of like the filmmaking, and that's the difference. That's the Edgar Wright touch, is that like we're gonna, even though we're in live action, we're filming like a real movie, we're gonna pull back a little bit and like make it a little bit more abstract than your average film, and that's gonna make the pill that is the wackiness and the unrealistic stuff that's happening easier to swallow in comparison to this, where like I'm looking at a kindergarten teacher teaching a kindergarten class, not seeing anything that out of the ordinary, just a 30-year-old man being a dick to a 5-year-old, and then they clap when their idol screams and calls them little shits.
The one thing we've kind of danced around giving the movie small compliments here and there amidst like swaths of criticism. I need to talk about Lupita Nyong'o's speech when she's yelling at Josh Gad, because it was like the one part of the movie where I sat up and went, "Holy fucking shit, Lupita Nyong'o is hands down too good for this fucking movie." Because it was incredible. It was tense. It was just, you could feel every moment of it, and it was so fucking raw and good. You could it was one of those moments where you felt that she was like a preschool, kindergarten, whatever the fuck she is, teacher. The anger, the pure instinct to protect the kids. It was so fucking good, and I just she was definitely the best part of this movie. It deserves way more than this.
Well, I mean, the nice thing is, she's already been in several prestige, like, Oscar-worthy movies, and she's got some nice Disney bucks under her belt with fucking Maz and Black Panther's girlfriend, which she should have had a bigger role in, because I was excited to see her in that movie. And then she just turned out, I don't even remember what she did, aside from fight some guys in the jungle at the beginning. And you know, she'll be fine. She'll be all right, I think.
Yeah, she was in Us. She's good. That movie was all right, but she was really strong in it. I'm sure she'll get more roles. I hope. Give her more roles, Hollywood.
I mean, I guess, you know, we were talking about this in the pre-discussion. Like, I didn't care for Us that much, but like what I did like about it was basically all her and Tim Heidecker, because Tim Heidecker's presence in anything makes it funny.
Because Tim Heidecker.
It's just kind of the absurdity of seeing Tim Heidecker show up anywhere that's not his box, basically. Not that he's not like a talented guy who doesn't deserve it, but it's so... I wish Tim Heidecker was in this movie.
It's just jarring, and it's jarring in the best way, but it's jarring as fuck. Oh god, put Tim Heidecker in everything. Put Tim Heidecker in Cats.
That would have been perfect. That would have I would have gone at the fucking midnight release of Cats if Tim Heidecker was in it.
Sorry, that was a very dark... I was getting ready to wrap up here, but that was a very dark thought that was very, very good.
I want to Berenstein myself into that universe.
Oh god, do we have anything left to say about this movie?
Nah, I'm tapped out as far as shitty not Edgar Wright movie. I will say that I do think I've made comparisons before, and maybe in the spirit of that, if you're an aspiring filmmaker, probably the closest thing I can give to a recommendation for this is, if you're a filmmaker, watch Shaun of the Dead and this back to back and take notes, because one of those movies is great and this one is really irritating.
And I do have to give thanks to Maddie, who did recommend this to us. I completely see why you did it. You've got our number, just not our movie, unfortunately. Like, this is absolutely something that should have worked for us. It just did not, for all the reasons we have listed previously, and we're not going to go through those again, because you can just listen to the episode again.
Yeah, although I guess as a final like footnote, I wonder if I'm just tapped out on zombies. Like, I'm still feeling fatigued from the 2010s, the era of the zombie. I think Night of the Living Dead kind of broke me. Like, if you go all the way back to that episode, I watched it and realized that every single movie about zombies since Night of the Living Dead has just been Night of the Living Dead, but worse. And I don't think I could do them anymore.
Well, get ready, because I've willed it into existence, so now we're going to get recommended Warm Bodies. So, hey... 2-3 weeks from now, we're watching that. Get excited.
Well, now that might be the second time I appear drunk on this podcast.
Oh, well, I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. Find me on Twitch at Helpless_Skippy. And find my writing over at 25yearslater.site.com.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me over at twitch.tv/JacksonJKeller. I got a new internet, so I'm gonna play Smash Brothers. I'm gonna be the very best, like no one ever was. Come fight me.
Follow the podcast over at BADH_cast on Twitter. We don't post too much there, but hey, sometimes we do, and sometimes we'll be like, hey, it's You know, it's a little something, got a little request week going on here, so send us your requests. You never know what we're going to post. And also support us on Patreon over at patreon.com/BADHcast. $1 gets you access to our Discord where you can yell at Jackson and I very directly if you so choose. $5 gets you access to all of our bonus episodes. We've got a ton of them, and they're all real good. You should go listen to them. $10 a month gets you access to all of our previous bonus episodes, our Discord, and you get to request bonus episodes. If you get something that you want to see from us, just be like, hey, I want to see this, and we'll watch it. It also gets you
a special shout out from us here at the end of every episode. Thank you so much to our stallions, to Travis, to Julia, to Mom, to Aunt Summer. Thank y'all. Y'all are wonderful.
And also thank you to Loads of the Highway for the use of our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate take off of the album High Octane, Low Expectations. They're a wonderful band. You should go check them out however you can. Buy their CDs, go see them live, go stream their music, whatever you got to do. And thanks to 25 Years Later Site.com. They got a little logo with us down in the corner somewhere. You can go click on and go check us out. But while you're there, you should also go click on their articles. They've got a ton of really great people doing a bunch of really talented writing with video games, movies, sports, all that good fucking shit. You never know what you're going to get over there. It's a rather comprehensive site. Next week, as I said, we're doing our follow-up to Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter with Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter. I don't know almost anything about this movie, and I'm pretty excited.
So, semi-related, when it comes to Jesus, I saw there was an announcement. I don't know anything about this game, but I saw that there's like a first-person adventure game where you play as Jesus. You play the saga of Jesus.
It's VR.
Is it VR?
It is, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It sounds fucking rad.
Oh, God. The problem is I know the limitations of VR, and I don't think it's going to be that great.
Probably not, but, like, the idea that, like, I'm going to raise Lazarus with, like, my 5 hands, like, that sounds perfect.
You might have just sold me on it.
Right? Like it's a real great idea.
Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go